Shalom, shalom to everyone watching. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. We are going to continue the summarizing of each chapter of the book To Be a Jew. So if you are now going through the book, this will hopefully be a little bit of a refresher and something good for you to refresh with, no? The chapter 1 of To Be a Jew, it begins with the Cornerstone of Judaism. And we look at Israel, the people. The term Hebrew, Israelite, and Jew have historically been used synonymously and interchangeably to refer to the same people. The Bible refers to Abraham as Ivri, Hebrew, probably because he migrated from the other side of the east of the Euphrates River, and Ivri means from the other side. Israel was the alternative name for Jacob, the grandson of Abraham. Hence, the 12 sons and their descendants became known as the children of Israel, or Bnei Israel, or Am Israel, or Am. The Jews is derived from Judah, Yehuda, the son of Israel, the most prominent of the 12 tribes of Israel. This became a prevalent name for the entire people, and when the Judeans from Kingdom of Judea survived the downfall of the northern kingdom in approximately 722 before the Common Era, when the 10 tribes were led into captivity. And thus the people are called Jewish in their faith, Judaism, in their language, Hebrew, in their land, Israel. Now, interesting to note that European Jews in the Middle Ages developed a dialect that was based on German and some Hebrew. This has been absorbed from many other languages as well. The language which is familiar to a great number of American Jews is called Yiddish. Written in Hebrew character, it is not the same language as Hebrew. Jews stemming from Spain developed a dialect based upon Spanish and some Hebrew, and this language is called Ladino. Many Ladino speakers till this day are known to even have existed during the time of the Inquisition. The people of Israel started life as one family, tracing its antecedents back to Abraham, the Hebrew who lived approximately 3,800 years. The monotheistic faith, firmly held by Abraham in the covenant with God, entered into him and was reaffirmed by his descendants, identified this family as adherent to this special faith. Family did not claim whatsoever any rights to this faith, but on the contrary, they were eager to attract others, to say the least, proselytize others to the idea of this one God. And this God-intoxicated family and those who joined them in their faith grew in numbers, accepting the Torah as their divine constitution, taking possession of the land promised to them by the Master of the universe himself, and they assumed the characteristic of the nation and a people speaking common language, living within a specific or specified geographic area, sharing common memories and common destinies, and exercising attributes of national sovereignty. On the basis of their origins, Jews everywhere have regarded themselves as members of a family, an expanded family to be sure, and oftentimes far-flung, but a family nevertheless. Membership in this family derives from the mother. The child of any Jewish woman is thus considered to be a member of the family, but membership in the family has never been limited by mere birth. It has always been open to all, and to those who share the faith of this family may be adopted into it. And thus the convert to Judaism not only becomes a partner in faith, adopted into it, but the convert to Judaism not only becomes a partner in faith with children of Israel, but through faith, a proselyte himself becomes one of the children of Israel. This is kind of mind-boggling, especially since you have so much misinformation out there in different social media saying, no, the real Jews, I love when they say that, the real Israelites are not those of Ashkenazic descendants. They were all from the Khazars, they were all converts. Only the Sephardims were the real ones. Bottom line is, whether they went and came into the people through conversion or they were born through a Jewish mother, the bottom line is that Judaism embraces both and all of these different kinds of ways of becoming part of Israel. And accepting the religious duties of the present and assuming the spiritual mission of the future, he also ties himself to that collective past. So what happened to Israel in the past is part of his present. Although the natural tendency for any family is to be exclusive, to look inward in particular family was never exclusive. In times of persecution, like we have now, it was sometimes forced to withdraw its self-defense, but generally it looked outward and reached out to the world at large. When the central sanctuary in Jerusalem was built, Jews saw it as a house of prayer for all people. And I have mentioned this so many times, even writing to President Trump regarding that when he becomes elected the president, to call the nations of the world to rebuild the house of prayer for all people, because in essence the temple was supposed to be and is going to be a place for all people to come and pray and worship the one God. So why the division? Because it's an issue of politics and not an issue of religious perspective. Isaiah 56:7, we see that also in 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 41 through 43. In the very emphasis upon the particular and singular family, reflected the noblest form of universalism. Universalism that permeates the faith of Israel is reflected not only in its theological formulation and its vision of the future, but its very composition of its people. Now let me go back for one moment because of the universalism of the idea of the house of the Lord for people's prayers of all walks of life. That does not mean that necessarily we're going to be embracing all the different forms of faith, but they will work together to build and pray to the one God, which all kinds of faith hold on to. This seemingly exclusive people includes those whose skins range from the lightest to the dark in color, and thus we'll find Jews who are white, as well as dark pitch black. Judaism and the idea of the Jewish faith doesn't discriminate because of the color of the skin. Yet despite the diversity that exists among them and the multitude of language that mings from the common Semitic family, although it's a religion which unites them, it is only on the basis of religion that newcomers are admitted into fellowship. This feeling of kinship is very strong. And the mystery deepens when we realize that even Jews who rebel against the faith and discarded its religious belief and practices are still regarded as Jews. You know, the old saying, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. And generally themselves, they still feel that bond of kinship, although they may have been divorced from the faith. This sense, without a doubt, is a kinship felt by Jewish people. It may be more of a mystical experience than a rational, definable one. Perhaps that is the very reason why Jews have never been able to quite fit into the convenient, typical labels and categories used by historians and socialists to define nations, race, religious, and other social groupings. Except for the fact that Jews obviously do not constitute a race. For a race is a biological designation. The Jews are not just religious faith, they're even though they're that, but they go beyond that. Jews are not just religious faith. They are also not just a nation, although they're a nation. They are a holy nation. The problem is usually resolved by using the term people instead of faith or nations. This difficulty in categorizing the Jewish people may well be part of their uniqueness. It is uniqueness which, according to believers, was given its permanent stamp of divine commandment. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. The Jewish people were once described in these poetic terms. There is a river in the ocean. In the severest drought it never fails. In the mightiest flood it never overflows. The Gulf of Mexico is its fountain, and its mouth is the Arctic seas. It is a Gulf Stream. There is no one in the world, no other such majestic flow. of waters. Its current is more rapid than the Mississippi's or the Amazon. Its volume is more than 1,000 times greater. Its waters, as far from the Gulf as Carolina coast, are to an indigo blue, and they are so distinctively marked that a line of junction with common seawater may be traced by the eye. Often, one half of a vessel may be perceived floating in the Gulf Stream water, while the other half is in the common water of the sea. So sharp is the line that such of a want of affinity between those waters, and such too reluctance, so to speak, the part of those of the Gulf Stream to mingle with common waters of the sea. This curious phenomenon in the physical world has its counterpart in the moral. There is a lonely river in the midst of the ocean of mankind, and the mightiest floods of human temptation have never caused it to overflow. The fierce fires of human cruelty, though even 7 times heated in the furnace of religious bigotry, have never caused it to dry up. Although its waves for 2,000 years have rolled crimson with blood of its martyrs, its fountain is in the gray dawn of the world's history. It is in the mouth, is somewhere in the shadow of eternity. It too refuses to mingle with surrounding waves in lines which divide its restless billows from common water of humanity. Although some people separate and make a distinction, Israel has nevertheless not been withdrawn people. Though standing alone, it has not stood aside. The Jewish history is interlaced with that of every other nation and empire. We Jews have witnessed and taken part in more of human career. They have recorded more of it and shaped in more human careers, have more of it, originated and developed more of it, suffered more of it than any other people. Of course, we read what wrote Ernest van den Haag. The history of the Jews has been a history of interaction with the rest of the world. Although Western scholars reared in a Christian-dominated society have tended to perceive only myopically the role dominated by the Jews in Judaism and that history, and to treat condescendingly anything that related to the Jews or to Judaism. Textbook history, sociology, and philosophy rarely have anything significant to say about the Jewish people or the Jewish thought after the beginning of the Christian era. The bias against Judaism and the Jews that was reflected for so long in the texts and curricula of the Christian universities was bequeathed to secular academic curricula and study. And here, significant to say about the Jewish people or the Jewish thought after, significant to say that the Jewish people at the beginning of the Christian era was able to come alight. The bias against Judaism and Jews was reflected for so long in their texts and their curricula of Christian universities that the secular academic world, even after theological influence waned and the institution became secular, even theological influence waned, the institution became secular, Jews entered the academic milieu and were subtly influenced by the existing bias and unquestionably accepted it themselves. Generally ignorant of their history, their own history, and philosophy, they fell sway to the notion that the serious Jewish thought beyond the biblical period either did not exist or did not merit its concern. They denied, despised, rejected, persecuted, confined, and restricted through history. But we just see something so unique recently after October 7th. An awakening of the Jewish spirit, an awakening of what it is and what it means to be part of the Jewish people. Though they denied, despised, and rejected, they live on. And they do live on because inside of them is a living, life-powering, and motivating soul, that which is given by God. So the Jews and Judaism, the people itself, and the sacred book have nevertheless often set in motion forces that marked major revolutionary changes and advances in Western religion and the natural and medical sciences and the social philosophies. The contribution by individual Jews in every field of created endeavor, advancement of human knowledge, the elimination of suffering, and the development of commerce have filled volumes. Judaism's traditional emphasis on social justice through social action has had a noticeable effect in contemporary times. For a people who have always been very numerically insignificant, although we read about 10 million now in Israel, and there's many more to come, the fewest of all nations of all was called Ha'amat Mikol Ha'amim, to use the words of the Torah, to have complied to such a record of achievement, to have been on the scene of world history for such a long time, while surviving all the attempts to simulate it and even annihilate it. Something must be more involved in the capacities of the people that makes themselves God's people, the people of Israel. The devout Jews, they look upon that something more as a fulfillment of divine prophecy, and that through you and your descendants with all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Genesis 28, verse 14. And as a vindication of the holy covenant that God made with Israel, for you are a holy people unto the Lord your God, and you did not choose to be unto him a treasured people from among all the people upon the face of the earth. In other words, God chose the children of Israel to be his unique and special vessel, vehicle, to bring the holiness of God into the world. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 2. The devout Jews accept this status with humility, not with boastfulness, and thanksgiving, seeing it's a yoke and a burden as well as distinction. So he sees himself, the Jew sees himself as the servant of the Lord, Oved Hashem, ready to do his bidding at all times. Serving the Lord takes many, many forms. Spending one's life studying Torah, faithfully observing the rituals and laws of ethical commandments, struggling for justice and righteousness in society. The learned and observant Jew ignores none of the ways. So whenever a believing Jew, an observant Jew, ignores none of its ways and finds himself doing so in fulfillment of that rule, whatever apparent smallness or insignificant is his existence may appear even to himself, something greater takes place, and that has a cosmic significance for the purpose in doing the bidding of the Lord. The skeptical Jew, on the other hand, who does not at all see himself as a servant of the Lord, but rather he's embarrassed by any reference to Israel's enjoyment of divine favor, even being called the chosen people. They're embarrassed of such a notion, as it were to fly against all forms of logic and reason. But his attempt at repudiating the meaning of the Jewish history are invariably contradicted by history itself. You see, the Jews will never be left alone. You will always have people poking and persecuting and reminding the Jew of his relationship with the Creator, which does not permit Jews to become like all other nations, though they try to become merely another national entity among the nations. So we believe that the nation and people of the world have their divine purpose without a doubt, and their assigned roles to fulfill too. For God is the God of all the world, not just of Jewry. And as we see, our divinely ordained assignment as involving a unique role, one to which history itself will bear witness and implies a special purpose in life and reason in our existence. In other words, the purpose is not to make Jews of all the world, but to bring the people of the world closer to the one God that we serve, whatever their distinctive belief may be, to an acknowledgement of the sovereignty of God, that God rules his world and God rules all, and to an acceptance of this basic value revealed to us by that God. It is this that serves as a mean by which the blessing will be brought to all of the families of the earth. Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. So it is this mission which underlines for the Jews the coming of the day when the world shall be perfected under the reign of the Almighty, and all mankind will call upon thy name. It is only in these terms that the supernatural though they be, that the plausible explanation can be offered for Israel's ability to survive against the many obstacles and threats to its very existence, like we see today in Eretz Israel. Its success in penetrating the thought of most of the nations. It is in these terms that we discover the meaning in Israel's historical suffering and dispersion, and as its achievement, its strength, and its restoration to Zion. Zion, Zion, Zion has become a bad word nowadays, since everybody looks at the anti-Zionist. Every single Jew in their heart are true Zionists if they believe in the one God, and if they believe in what God has called the Jewish people to become or to be, and that is a holy nation. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with a summary of the first part of chapter 1 of the Cornerstone of Judaism, to be a Jew. Stay tuned for the next one, which is Israel and its land.